fall and never rise again. That was one of the prophecies, that the visions that God showed Amos. There were many. He was trying to deal with the northern kingdoms, the 10 tribes that had separated from Judah and the southern kingdoms, and there was a split. Many of you already know that there was a time that many of the Jews would not pass through Samaria because of the degradation that was going on there, because of the adultery, because of they considered it a profane thing. Even the dust, if they crossed the border and they accidentally stepped across the line and touched the land of Samaria, they would kick off the dust from their shoes and consider themselves unclean and go through all kinds of rituals because they knew the degradation that was in that land. Yet, Samaria, even a nation as sinful as Samaria had become, the 10 tribes had become, they were still a chosen people of God. And you can't take that away from them. This vision was one of many that God gave Amos, dealing with the judgment upon the northern 10 tribes. Amos was a very humble and unlearned man. He served under the king Jeroboam the second. Jeroboam the second was a pretty good king as far as civil actions were concerned. He gained all of the lost lands of Israel back. He put the country in a state of prosperity that they had never known before. Everybody was doing good. Life was good in Samaria. Although Amos was unlearned, he wasn't trained in the temple protocol. He wasn't trained to do all of the things that the priests that were living their lives as priests, born as priests into that day and time. He was a simple man. He was a unlearned man. He was a shepherd. He was a man that made a living off of gathering figs from the sycamore trees, sycamore figs. So he didn't come from the same priestly class, and he didn't know all of the etiquette that it was. He was just a righteous man doing the best that he could. He did so well at what he did, though he wasn't a priest, he had a direct communication with God. God personally didn't send word to, God personally talked with Amos. And he showed Amos some things that he didn't show other people. Now, Amos, although he was unlearned and untrained and skilled in the priestly etiquettes, he was still among great men. He was a great friend with Hosea. Although Hosea's tribulation that Hosea went through was a demonstration that God wanted to present to the people of how they had been unfaithful in the love that God had shown them. Like an unfaithful wife, Gomer had succumbed to the wanderings of a lifestyle that she was supposed to have been taken out from. Israel had done the same thing. They had went back and pursued other lovers rather than God. Amos's message was a little different. He was a shepherd, a businessman. He gathered fruit. Didn't say he went and picked figs. He said he gathered figs. So he was a fig broker, if you will. He made quite a bit of money because the land was prosperous. Everybody was making money in one aspect or another. The only difference between Amos and the way he did business and the way that the other Samaritans were doing business, Amos had a fair weight, fair measure. He believed in God. He had a moral conscience that allowed him to walk within the precepts and the concepts of the Mosaic laws that was laid out that mandated that we take care of those that were in need. Others that were in the Samaritan civilization, they were caught up with the prosperity and they had allowed themselves to sway from that because money all of a sudden now became their God. They enjoyed a great trade relationship with the Phoenicians, who were seagoing people, and they would go from land to land, and they would trade different items and artifacts, and they were bringing new technology, and they were bringing new beautiful items and shiny objects and all kinds of different pleasure principles that catered to prosperity. Why is it that the more prosperous the person becomes, the more inclined to sin they are? Well, Amos was assigned the task of going to the Samaritans, going to Israel, the northern kingdoms, and letting them know that God was done with that. Yes, yes. So he showed him a basket of summer fruit. Now, being a gatherer of sycamore and gatherer of fruits, he showed him a basket filled with summer fruit. Boy, I bet they were looking good. I bet they were just as beautiful. I bet they were just as sweet. But being a broker, Amos had a different perspective on that basket of fruit than most people like you and I would probably have. We go to the market and we test the fruit, make sure it's ripe and make sure it's ready and make sure it's sweet. We thump watermelons and we do all of those kinds of things to make sure it's right, because we're going to consume that right away as soon as we get home. I can't wait to get home. I love cherries. I love watermelons. I love all of that. My wife will tell you we have fruit in the house all the time. All right. But with Amos, he wasn't looking as a consumer would look upon this fruit. He was looking the way a businessman would look upon that fruit. Yes, yes. So when the Lord showed him a basket of summer fruit, he was not really that excited. It really didn't thrill him that much, because in looking in that fruit, he knew that as big as this basket was, that I would either have to eat all of this fruit right now, or it was going to be a loss, a business loss, something that I would have to write off. Amos knew that the first fruits were the best fruits as far as business was concerned, even though they were a little green and they might not be as sweet as the summer fruit was, but it would give him time to take that fruit, pick it, package it up, and get it to market that he could sell it in bulk. During that time, the fruit would start to slowly ripen. So he would have time to sell his fruit so that he can make a profit. Summer fruit to Amos only meant that I had to eat it right now or I was going to lose money. So he was not impressed with it. But God wanted to know how he viewed it, because there was a specific message that God wanted his people to know. And rather than choose the priestly class to deliver that message, he chose his friend Amos. And he asked him, after he had showed him the basket, he said, Amos, what seest thou? He said, I see a basket of summer fruit. God was showing him that the time had come. He said, the time of me looking past those little petty sins that my people are doing, those little petty, irrational things that they're doing, and I know that they're ignorant in what they're doing, and they're praising other gods, and there's new technology coming in. Now all of a sudden, people have these little bitty gods in their house. They have the game god. They have I got to go God, and they got all these other little gods. I got to wash my car God, and they have all these little gods in their house now, because prosperity is good. Life is good in Samaria. God said, it's time now. I want you to tell my people I'm not going to pass by. I'm not going to look over that anymore. I'm sick of it. It's done. It's a wrap. You can stick a fork in this one. It's over. Everyone's going to be held accountable for what they do. Like summer fruit, Israel was ripe for judgment. Their color may look good, the fragrance of the fruit may be good, but they were ripe. And when fruit gets ripe, there's a certain window. Any of you that ever had bananas around or had peaches around or whatever, there's a certain window that it's as sweet as it's going to get. And then it stops becoming ripe, and starts moving towards rotten. Many of us are